Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. Today I'm taking an exam, and after you have not been in school for about 2 years, well, that's not true, it's been less than 2 years, but I was writing my thesis the last semester, so it feels like it's been more than 2 years. It's pretty hard. I really love when people call it not multiple choice but multiple guess, because it's totally what this feels like. And supposedly I'm not supposed to study the day of. This is for insurance. So yeah, in addition to my 500 jobs, I think I'm going to start doing insurance stuff. Why? Because I'm about to move into my new place. So wherever that new place is, I couldn't tell you at this point. It's going to be somewhere, and somewhere near my family in New Jersey. But I don't know how I'm going to afford, even if I do my grand travel discontinuation, just to live there and still simultaneously save money for retirement and all these other fun things, and feed myself, and maintain a social life. That's the worst part, is like going out to eat is expensive. Although I can invite people over for dinner, so I'll probably start doing that. And I probably will still go back and forth to Finland a bit, which usually costs me under $500 because I book my flights on SAS usually, or Icelandair, during wintertime and far in advance, so they're usually like $440, not even $500, and I fly without luggage, so all these things that work in my favor. But yeah, I'm just like, I have two options. I can either stop doing things, which doesn't work for me because I have too much energy, or I could just work more, so I'm going to go with that one. Before I came back to the US, I did do some Googling with workaholism. I definitely understand it's something I'm facing. Somebody commented about that in Russian. I'm not even sure how to address that comment in Russian, so whatever. But it's fine. Sometimes it's fine to be a workaholic. I just always say I gotta be some sort of a holic, and I'd rather be a workaholic than an alcoholic, so let's go with that. Yeah, I hate to say that's probably true, but it probably is. I think also I just like, as I've said before, growing up, my example of a role model was my dad, and he worked a lot, so I think that's like where I got that from, so whatever. But yeah, so I gotta take this exam. It's in some hours, and I'm trying to eat breakfast and stuff, and it's really ugly outside, which is very nice, because then I don't have to go anywhere, and I feel like I'm reliving COVID, although I do need to go somewhere because I'm running out of food. So there's that. Okay, but today I want to talk about culture shock between, basically when I came back from Finland, how that felt in the US. And this was inspired by a conversation I was having with somebody yesterday. And yeah, so the thing is, right now, this is a very kind of moot point, because I have the luxury, or the displeasure, whichever one you want to call it at this point, of going back and forth between Finland and the US. And I would say, because I do it so frequently, of course I notice that something's different, but it's not like this big adjustment thing. Because the last time I was in Finland, before I moved back in 2023 to secure a job, I was in Finland for 8 months straight, and I didn't go back to the US, which was the longest I'd been abroad ever, and like not in the US at all. Even with Kyrgyzstan, I got sent back because of COVID after like month 7, and then had to continue my classes from home. So there's that. But today I just kind of want to go over, what did that look like? What did that feel like? Because I understand that is something that people face, like people go to Finland, they have this whole dream of like, they're going to build a life there. And recently I've been hearing a lot about how the job market is really bad. I read somebody's LinkedIn post yesterday, a foreign person living in Helsinki, who said they applied to over 1,000 jobs and couldn't find anything and are still looking. And to stay in Finland had to like start working for Posty. And I was like, yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. And I always say I'd just go work at McDonald's. I don't care. Because then it would probably help me learn Finnish. But also, like, I do need to use my brain. This is the biggest hard thing for me about, like, me with working. I'm the person where I'm like, I wish everybody just got paid the same amount to work, but then I just got to use my brain, but I still got paid the same amount. That's not how it works. And I get it. It's like, why work harder than you have to? I said this the other day. But yeah, so culture shock things. Like, one of the things that I've been doing, so like, I was so excited about getting my own health insurance in the US with my own new US job, because I'm like, now I can spend all my health insurance the way I want. Because very honestly, growing up, I was extremely discouraged from going to the doctors because it cost money. Okay, then that's kind of the dumb thing, is even with insurance, going to the doctor still costs money. So there were certain things, like the really sad one is like, I needed to go on Accutane for years and years and years. Okay, like retrospectively, I wish I went on Accutane at age 15. I think I tried to, and it just like never actually worked out. And I didn't go on Accutane until like age 22 or something. Ugh, gosh, it was a lot of suffering. Okay, there's a lot of years of suffering with acne, and it was expensive. Like, that's the thing, you know. It's like at the beginning of the month, before you hit the deductible, the medication was costing $300. You had the doctor's visits on top of that. You had to go to a dermatologist every month and confirm you weren't pregnant. This is, you know, like part of the process because of the lawsuits. It's the US. And then you had to what else, go get blood work every month. Okay, so like, it's just, I grew up being like, I couldn't use my own insurance plan, or like it was extremely discouraged, or a lot of it was going to like other family members, so it was like, oh, I shouldn't be the one who's using it. Like, it's a sad reality, but like, I understand that that was kind of the, like, whether it was overt or covert, that was the message that was sent to me growing up. So when I got my own insurance, I'm like, I'm going to use this thing. Well, then you start realizing that it's so expensive, and then you have the FSA account, and then you have the HSA account, then you have different types of ones, and basically I got to this point where I'm like, well, I don't want to use all the money in my FSA account on this. So for instance, like when I was having this knee problem, I just went and got an x-ray at the hospital in La Pedronta because I just wanted to make sure everything was okay, and I was scared to go to the doctor because it's the beginning of the year and I didn't hit the deductible yet, and it was like $40, 40 euros. So one of the things that I actually like about when I come to Finland is if I have a weird medical thing like that, sometimes I'm just like, I'm just going to go handle that here. The other thing is, for example, when I first started my health insurance, I was in Texas, and then I needed to go to urgent care and get antibiotics. And whereas if I had the same problem in Finland, once I had already gone to the doctors once, if I called up and I was like, hey, I have this recurring problem, and can you please fill a script for this antibiotics at the pharmacy? They're like, yes, of course. That's kind of a joke, too, that Finnish people always say yes, of course. Think about it when they're speaking English. It's like, yo, totta kai. I guess they say that in Finnish, but I don't hear that as much as yes, of course, when they're speaking English. Okay, so that was not an issue, and I actually have this one friend whose boyfriend is becoming a doctor in Finland, so there are certain things I'll like talk to her about, and she's like, yeah, if a woman calls up and is like, I have a specific problem, I need antibiotics, then yeah, you can give it to them. So I'd say like the healthcare thing maybe is like the biggest culture shock. Like, I've avoided using healthcare a lot in my life, probably up until recently, because I've just had, let's say the privilege of using it. But then I also came to understand, like, I was so afraid of using healthcare abroad because I didn't know how it worked. Now I'm like, it saves you, yeah, it's a headache to figure out because you don't know how it works because you didn't grow up in that system. But at the same time, it's so much cheaper that I'm like, I'd rather just do everything here. So, you know, that's what I've converted to. But anyway, I really like love the healthcare professionals in Finland I've talked about. This has been more of my culture shock, like reversely in a positive way, as I'm like, wow, like the Finnish doctors really care, and like they give you time, and it's not like in and out kind of thing, and then we're still charging you $100 for this visit. So that's that, but that's more of a recent development. So if I want to talk about the things that were really hard for me at the beginning, one of them is I hate driving. I've talked about this a lot. I'm really like a public transportation person. It's still morning tea time. Yes, I'm a public transportation person. I did see somebody's comment about how you have your own personal space in your car and you get to listen to music and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but if you're driving a lot, it's a very lonely, isolating experience. That's how I feel about that. And like, I literally avoid driving in the US, like, because it does make me feel like sad, to be honest. It makes me feel very isolated. Now it's like, but wouldn't you feel more isolated in Finland? And yeah, you do feel more isolated in Finland. And that's kind of going to bring me to my next point. Is I feel like although Finland had the greatest potential for loneliness, it also had the greatest potential for connection. So these things, it's like, well, what? That's very paradoxical. Yes, I understand, but when you break through that initial barrier of like, I feel so lonely, somehow I feel like once you get past that and you admit that to yourself, that's when you can actually start connecting with people. Don't ask me why it works that way, but that was just my experience. I was also discussing yesterday how it's like, all the drama in La Pedronta, because it's like small town vibes and stuff, and it's like, how could that much drama happen in the most boring place ever? Maybe I just am the drama. Maybe I just bring the drama. It's probably why I just try to stay away from people at this point. But I don't know. I mean, sometimes drama can come from literally nothing, and I feel like that was a lot of what was happening. So I guess the thing is, I was thinking about like my two remaining best friends from this experience who, like, I don't talk to them every day anymore. I still consider us best friends. I don't know whether they consider us best friends, but that like, I don't talk to them every day because we don't like live there together anymore. It's like we still talk sometimes. I still see them as much as I can. Like, my relationships with them are very important. It's just that right now it's like I don't really think I like talk to anybody every day anymore, which I also kind of like because it means like I'm pretty independent. So that was the thing though, is I think I kind of switched this more like dependent lifestyle when I was in Finland, and then I went back to being independent in the US. And I guess the answer is I like both in different ways, but when you're used to one and then you have to rapidly switch back to the other, it can be hard. Like, I actually remember, so the irony is like the initial feelings of loneliness that you feel in Finland as a foreign person eventually kind of almost like go away, and then you're so connected with people to the point where when I came back to the US, it's like I was like, I'm never going to have this level of connection again. And it's dramatic and obviously not really how that works, but it was just, I was used to having these people who were so integrated in my life every day who were not my family. And like, I remember distinctly like having my internship in summer 2022, and I had like 2 friends I was really close to, and those were the friends I no longer stayed friends with. And I just like remember telling my dad, and this is very American, this is hilarious, I was like, I feel lonely, like I miss my friends, right? I just said this, okay? This is what I'm talking about by validating negative emotions. And instead of being like, I understand, or whatever, like random comment back to that to validate that, my dad's just like, well, work more and you won't feel lonely. And then I listened to that, okay? And that's kind of where I'm at now. And I'm not saying it's like healthy or good, but in Finland, and this is the thing I would tell people, is like at the beginning, especially when I was still trying to make friends, right? This is like into like January, February of the first year I got there. I arrived in August. And it was also because it was COVID, and it was like I only had like 2 friends, and then I made like 2 more friends, but I wasn't really that close with the 2 more friends yet, so I didn't feel like I really had anybody I could like be myself around. And I just remember going to I'd walk to the lake and just like cry because I felt lonely, like physical pain from being lonely. And like that was the weirdest experience I ever had in my life, because it wasn't something I ever felt in the US. In the US, you're like so distracted. There's, especially in New Jersey. New Jersey's like twice the population of Finland. That's an exaggeration, but like our population is 9 million in New Jersey. Finland's population is 5.5 million. I'm sure you can see the disparity. Also, New Jersey is like this small, and then Finland's like this big. So, so I was used to like having people around me all the time, like even though I'm not talking to the people, right? And in Finland, it's just like there just aren't people around like that. Like there aren't. I mean, now again, it's better because of COVID, but like I went there during COVID, so it was not the same feeling, especially in Lappeenranta, and like there not being that many international students yet. So there was that whole thing. So yeah, I think that I started feeling very like when I came back to the US, very like lonely, disconnected. Like I had a lot of really close relationships. I had time for relationships. I used to host dinner parties. Like I felt very maybe like well integrated into like the community. Like I liked all my friends. I actually liked more of like, I've talked about this in another video, but like even like the religious community setting that I was involved in there, like it was just all of that stuff like I just preferred, because it felt a lot less like competitive, just more chill. Like there was more of and I've talked about this also, it's like an essence and like a feeling around being versus doing. Like in the US, everything's about doing, being productive. And so maybe I'm just too good at adapting to other cultures is kind of what the problem is. And then it feels like an extreme adaptation, and that can kind of cause some growing pains or discomfort or whatever you want to call it. Because, well, assuming I look the part, like I can walk around in most places and people don't realize I'm foreign. People do think I'm German. That happened to me in the airport in Turkey where I sneezed and somebody said Gesundheit to me. I'm like, I had to not laugh out loud because it was pretty funny. But yeah, so I think those are some of the things, just with like the loneliness thing, the intensity maybe of the relationship, the frequency with which I'm seeing people every day. Like in Finland, it's like everything's really small. You can like walk over to people's houses. In America, it feels a lot more like it's this big thing and I have to plan it and I have to drive there, and that takes energy, and I don't have a lot of energy because I'm working a lot. And then also like I have family. And I think that was the thing too, is like I was interacting daily with my family, and then hate to say it, but a lot of times I'd feel, I'm going to say I met my emotional quota for the day of interacting with people. And so I was like, sometimes seeing a friend was like too much for me. That's how it started to be. Or I have my dogs and I like being at home because of my dogs, or I have my sister. I like talking to my sister. So, she's like a kid, but still, she's like one of my favorite people. She knows she's my favorite person, actually. We've confirmed that. But yeah, so I think it was like the biggest thing was like the general anxiety, and I've called this before on this channel, the ambient stress, right? Like somebody wrote an article on this. Like everybody in the US is just like rushing. It's like, we got to go here, we got to go there. Like, we're all freaking out. And in Finland, like nobody's freaking out like that. And so that's the thing, that even if I'm freaking out internally, I at least don't have the pressure of everybody freaking out on top of me. So like, I can kind of freak out in a bubble, and then everybody else around me is calm, rather than it being like chaos all over the place. Like that's the best way I can explain it. Like, growing up, it was a lot of like, you have to work, and you have to go to school, and you have to do religious stuff, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. And like, to be fair, like, I'm very productive. Like sometimes like I really can't relate to the feeling of like, I've had friends who are also very like successful and have done really cool things, or like did their masters, whatever, and they're like, I don't feel like I was productive enough today. And I was like, I can't relate to that feeling. Like, I really can't. Okay, like I feel like I spend most of the time being productive. Like, I don't watch TV. I don't watch anything. Like, literally, I barely watch YouTube. I do YouTube. I don't even watch YouTube. I try to like browse YouTube so I get some inspiration, but like sometimes I'll put it on while I'm cooking and I'm doing something else. But like, I'm not really even good at I'm not even good at watching my own videos, to be honest with you. So yeah, like this is what I'm trying to get at. It's the obsession with productivity that Americans have. It's like the capitalism thing. It's trying to earn more money. And, like a lot of the Russian side of the channels, like, has a problem with this, right? And I get it, because in Russia, like, their values are not around like money and productivity as much. I'd say they still are a little bit, but their values are very much so around like knowledge and spirituality. Like, and I don't necessarily mean spirituality always in like a religious sense, but like by kind of manifesting these things within your being and like having conversations with people where you appear to be like well read and well educated and like knowledgeable and like in control of your emotions, right? Like, I think the stoicism thing is actually very popular with Russian people, because I've heard about it from more than one Russian person. So Americans don't care about emotional stability. I'm just going to throw that out there. I mean, I hate to be like this, but like, look at our president, right? Like, people like that vibe because he just like freaks out on people. And like that, but I think that is very symbolic of kind of like, yeah, I always say like Americans, and this is the biggest thing. I think Americans are like, have the lowest like EQ ever. Like, that's really how I feel. Now, blanket statement generalization, but like what I mean by that is like this whole freaking out, being productive, like being so hard driving and like wired and livid all the time, like that feels very American. Like in Finland, like people aren't spazzing out like that. And I'm not saying it's everybody, like I said, but it is the ambient stress. Like, we are so stressed out. Why are we so stressed out? We are the most privileged country in the world. Well, a lot of it has to do with like, there's the wage gap. Like, most people are working very hard. Like, most people think they need to achieve these things. There's a lot of competition. Like, yes, there are a lot of job opportunities, but there's also a lot of competition. And it's, it's the most powerful economy in the world for a reason. And with that comes another set of problems. So as I say, there are problems everywhere. It's just you need to pick your own set of problems. So for me, because I enjoy breaking systems, if you will, or living outside of systems, going around systems, whatever, like, I will admit that I think for me, like, I like to cherry pick, right? So I'm trying to take the best of both situations, right? So like, part of it is I like working in the US, and I've done this my whole life. This is not just like a recent development, right? Like, once I started realizing, hey, I can like make more money in the US and I can just leave the US and enjoy my life. So I got to suffer for a little bit and then just leave and like enjoy it, right? So like, I'd grind at the restaurant, then I'd go to Kyrgyzstan for 9 months, or I'd like work at NASA and then I'd go to Armenia for 2 months, or whatever I would do. Like, I'm the largest exporter of the US dollar. I doubt that's actually true, but that's what I tell myself, right? So the whole thing is like, I really do like working in the US. I think the US is the best place to earn money. I say this all the time. I don't think the US is the best place to live, at least not for me. And this feels really hard. My entire family is in the US. Like, I feel like a sense of guilt around like permanently leaving the US, right? Even though I don't want to be there, it's like nobody realizes like that is partially a sacrifice I make. But at the same time, the selfish part of it is I do like working in the US, right? So there are these two things. However, lifestyle wise, like, I loved my life in Finland, right? Like, I loved the fact that I had 5 hours any day of the week to talk to somebody and have like a philosophical discussion. People in the US don't really have time for philosophical discussions, or finding somebody who's interested in having a philosophical discussion may be more difficult than you think. I found also that those people are usually not the actual American ones. They're usually the ones who like are immigrant children, or immigrants themselves, etc. So the biggest culture shock really was that everybody was stressed out, and I had to like deal with that energy input of a lot of people being stressed out all the time. I hated that part. I think also, and this is me just putting a lot of pressure on myself in general. Like, I came back from Finland, I was 28 years old, I was starting a job, and I kind of felt like I was at this point where I was already supposed to like be married and then eventually having kids, and I wasn't there, and that was kind of making me feel like, and this is not a pressure anybody was putting on me, right? This is a pressure I was putting on myself. And in Finland, I don't feel like that's really a thing that happens as much at 28. People are like, I need to be married and have kids. But I do feel like that's kind of a thing that's a little bit more common in the US. So that was starting to cause me a little bit of distress too. I felt like, okay, I figured out the job thing, but now I didn't figure out those things. But then, that still didn't work out for me for like, how long has it been now? Like almost 2 years, less than that. But so I'm like, all right, well, now the housing thing, right? So I transitioned into like, now I have a job, now I have to figure out how to manage my money. That was kind of always my plan because I didn't have that much money to manage before. Although I still think retrospectively, all right, I'm going to put it this way. When I have a kid, we are starting personal finance as soon as that kid starts doing math in school, because I think that was dumb, like what I did, honestly. Like, I'm just going to spend all my money on flights. That's cool, but you should also be saving for your IRA as soon as you turn 18. That's just my opinion, but I feel very strongly about that opinion. Okay, so I came back, and then I started being like researching the US housing market, and I was like, this is impossible. I've been on Zillow since September 2023, okay? And what I've seen on there recently is some of the cheapest stuff I've seen, which is why I've jumped on it. I'm like, the market's been doing something weird actually for the last 3 months, because I'm like a market stalker with the housing market where I live. And then I was like, so I still don't have enough money to buy a house or whatever, apartment, doesn't matter. So I'm going to go into personal finance. And I got into that. But anyway, these were like the weird, sad things I felt like I kind of had to like adjust to fit back in with American culture. And now people are like, money is the root of all evil, whatever. But, to quote the Bible, it says money is a protection. The reality is we all have to deal with money, whether we like it or not. It's just right now I'm at a point in my life where this happens to be a more important topic because it is more of a problem that I'm having, right? It's like, I need to move out. My phobia of moving out is around money. So basically, this is the devil that I have to deal with or conquer, or whatever. The devil that's in the details, right? I think that's the expression. So yeah, that's that. But the idea that I even have to worry about that is kind of a weird thing, right? Because in Finland, so like my one Finnish friend came to visit pretty much as soon as I got back to the US. He came in like October, and he's all like, you guys still live at home? And I'm like, you don't understand like how our housing market works. And we had to tell him about it, and he like didn't get it, right? Because this is a kid, well, he's not a kid, he's older than me, whatever. This is a dude who's been living by himself since the age of 15, went to Lukio, like high school in Finland, and then he just, kept living by himself. Now he lives with his girlfriend, like most Finnish people do. And he like just doesn't understand that like, you can be a student and you can get these benefits and you can get student housing and then you can afford your rent and everybody can afford their rent. No. I have no idea how half the people near where I live afford their rent. I'll tell you, the one dishwasher, the one Mexican guy at the restaurant I work with, his rent is what, $1,800, and he works 2 jobs to pay his rent. And he's like, this is the American dream. What is this? And I'm like, exactly. And, America sucks more for certain immigrants. It also, sucks more for certain Americans. So I think it comes down to like, how much privilege did you have? How much are your parents willing to help you out? Blah, blah, blah. In Finland, it's just like, there's not that level of like inequality, right? And so I feel like with the US thing, you're made to feel bad regardless of what side of the inequality table you're sitting. So either you're going to feel resentful of the people who have more privilege than you, or if you have privilege, sometimes you're going to feel bad and guilty that you have more privilege than other people. I'd say I sit on both sides of the table, if I'm being very honest. This is like the Russian expression to sit on 2 chairs, and I'm like, oh, that's what I do. And my friend is like, that's not good. It means you're not trustworthy. And I was like, okay, thanks. But that's why I was talking about cherry picking before. Yeah, people don't like that. It's fine, whatever. I would say Finns probably definitely would not like that. So in the US, people act like they don't like it, but they themselves do it. So maybe that's the thing. All right. That's another thing. There is a higher degree of hypocrisy in the US that definitely does not exist in Finland. And I think that's very annoying. And to some extent, I believe that everybody's hypocritical. I'm going to be cynical like that for a second. But in the US, people are very like, they're like this. They're like parents especially. It's like, do what I say, not what I do, or watch what I say, not what I do, right? And in Finland, I think people are much more like mind their own business and like lead by example. In the US, I don't think enough people lead by example. I think people just talk out of their butt, if you will, and they say stuff and they don't even like mean it or do it themselves. Like people are just like all talk and no show. And that's not everybody, but like I see that attitude a lot more. There's a lot more like over promising and under delivering. Whereas in Finland, if somebody knows they can't do something, or if they're fearful that they're not going to be able to say yes, they don't tell you yes. Whereas in the US, people are much more okay with saying yes and then like backing out later. So that's another thing, and that's kind of annoying. Probably annoying because of the autism. No, but like you kind of like things to be like very like set and scheduled and like, you know, in the bag. And in the US, it's a lot harder to get that, I would say. Even though you're dealing with a level of cultural ambiguity, trying to do things in Finland, there's still that. But yeah, I would say, like I said, the biggest thing for me was just the general, like, everybody being stressed out again thing, and having to, like, reintegrate into, like, not having time for friends, being really focused on, like, surviving. And, like, that was something my dad taught me growing up. Like, he was just like, life is about survival, right? Like, life is not about having fun. Life is not about your relationships. Life is not about this. It's just about, like, worrying about how you're going to feed yourself. And I think it's a terrible way to live, I'm not going to lie, but it is a trap I've fallen into recently. And it's kind of like depression. As I once explained depression. Depression is like laying in a hole, looking up at the sky and being like, I just don't care to move or get up right now. I'm just going to stay here. And to be honest, that's kind of how I feel right now. Like, I know that how I'm living is not really the way I want to be living, like, if I'm being super honest, but I'm also at a point where I just don't care to get up and move. Like, I would like to have more time for friends. Really, that's probably the biggest thing. I would like to feel more connected with people, but I'm just not at a point right now where I'm willing to take that jump and take that risk and stop worrying about the survival aspect of what's going on in my life. And people are like, well, you're traveling so much. Okay, yeah, well, the stupid thing is I planned all this super far in advance. So first off, it was a lot cheaper back then. Second off, I was like, oh, well, I already planned it, so I may as well just do the thing, right? Because I'm very, like I said, I was going to do something, I'm going to do the thing. Try to be that way. Not saying it always comes to be, but it's how it is. All right, so I'm going to keep studying for this exam and I hope I don't fail. And post this later today. All right, that's everything I have for today. So, like, that's more of a personal experience, but I did try to sprinkle in there, like, Finland versus the US, and these are the different things. And, like, yeah, to be fair, it's like, yes, I do love Finland. It's just trying to figure out how to make that financially viable. And the more people I talk to about how hard it is to get a job there, like, it's the sad reality of, like, that's what's going on with that situation. That's why I'm not there all the time. All right, so until my next video, bye.